The point of my talk today is primarily on the issue of, or issues plural, of doing human rights, particularly in terms of providing aid assistance for human rights movements in other countries. And as alluded to in the introduction, excuse me, a lot of the work that I do is related to Burma, sometimes called Myanmar. I was born in the country, so as a member of the Pao peoples in Shan state, that's in the eastern part of Burma. And I return to the country on an annual basis to help in teaching human rights, particularly in the universities, but also with the governments and the civil society organizations. A lot of that experience relates to the kinds of human rights efforts that international aid organizations and foreign aid organizations coming from places like the United States engage in. And invariably, a lot of what the effort relates to is the promotion of what we use the term universal human rights, or the kinds of principles that are articulated in international legal instruments like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, and other treaties, conventions, declarations, etc. What invariably occurs through these kinds of aid efforts is that you'll have an aid worker as part of an aid organization. The aid organization is operating under a grant from a donor, international donor of some kind. And the grant, the amount of money is on a fixed term, usually 2, 3, 5 years. Then the aid worker, when they go into a country, is working with that funding on a program that also has a limited duration, usually 2, 3, 5 years, but the aid workers themselves usually are rotated in and out on a periodic basis. So sometimes it can be, as short as 2 weeks, and then other times it can be during the entire term of the grant. The issue that arises, or the challenge that arises, is that there's an inequality or an inequity. When I use the term equity, it's always about the question of fairness in terms of the kinds of risks that are faced and the kinds of challenges that are faced by locals who are receiving this kind of training versus the aid workers who are then able to leave once the training is done. Aid workers, because of the nature of the profession and the nature of the industry, they know that once their mission is completed, once they know their rotation is completed, that they can go back to their home countries. They also know that if they ever encounter a dangerous situation, or if there's any kind of a problem, that they'll usually be pulled out of the country and then return to the safety of whatever origin, place of origin they came from. And then likewise, a lot of donors and aid programs, they also know that if they ever encounter some kind of a challenge or a problem, a resistance in a particular country, that it's just a simple matter of suspending the program, or that they can always stop things altogether. In contrast, when you look at the locals in country, they have a very different set of circumstances. So, we use this term about the risk-reward equation. So the kinds of risk and rewards that they face are very different. And you can see in places like Myanmar, these aren't trivial. So, the act of doing human rights, the act of promoting human rights is almost by definition challenging the status quo. It's about, encouraging change. It's about promoting international norms. We use this term norms in terms of what's appropriate conduct for right, wrong, appropriate, inappropriate. And by challenging the status quo, it means that you're challenging the existing authority figures, the existing power structures. And sometimes the existing authority figures are not entirely happy with the notion of change. What we see around the world, not just in places like Burma, but around the world, when you're dealing with a lot of countries, they have authoritarian regimes. With authoritarian regimes, the response invariably is very harsh measures. And so what I've seen in places like Burma, you're seeing it now, is that human rights activists are actually risking their lives. Anyone who espouses things like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, they are actually facing a very serious possibility of being arrested and then tortured, killed. And as a result for them, the risk reward equation is that there's a very high risk to their lives and the lives of people around them, whereas the individual rewards are not very apparent. And if they encounter these kinds of situations, they're not able to leave. They're not able to get out, right? It's their country, and that's what they have to face. And so the reason I am bringing this up is that for those of us who do believe in human rights, and for those of us who do want to support the promotion of human rights globally, there's a measure of need for sensitivity and a measure of need to be aware as to the kinds of risks and rewards that our counterparts in other countries face, and to sort of figure out a way to help them in their mission. So in a lot of human rights studies and development studies, we use this term about having champions, that we try to provide capacity building efforts to develop and nurture local champions that will advance these international norms. But we also have to be cognizant of the kinds of challenges that they encounter. So, another term that we talk about within development studies and human rights studies is the notion of agency versus structure. It's a term that's borrowed from critical studies or the subfields of critical studies. And so what this means is that we recognize that individuals have agency, that they have the ability to choose what they want to do. They have the ability to pursue actions in support of what they believe in. But we also recognize that they work within structures. So structures of power, structures that are set by the existing legal systems in countries, the existing political elites in countries, the existing authoritarian regimes that constrain what people are able to do. So, how do we handle this, and what are the ways that we as supporters of human rights can help our counterparts in other countries? Well, the first thing I think that's constructive is that we have to be sensitive. We have to be able to listen to hear what they say. We have to be able to have engagement with them where they tell us what they think is important and what they need in terms of help and the kinds of challenges and dangers that they face. The second is that we have to be cognizant of the fact that after we leave, they have to pick up the pieces of what we leave behind. And so as a result, that whenever possible, that we try to maintain some level of engagement, we continue the relationship as much as possible, and that it's not just a simple matter of that we show up, stay, do our work, and then leave, right? Americans in particular are notorious for throwing money at a problem and then showing up for 2 weeks or a month, and then they never come back. And that kind of engagement is really difficult to deal with if you're on the ground and you're looking for help and you're looking for assistance, and the person who's giving you the help just basically disappears after a certain period of time. The third thing that I think is relevant is to think about the risk-reward equation and to think about the ways that we can somewhat mitigate this. And so what I mean is that we can think about ways of exploring shared risks and shared rewards, that we're able to make the relationship between us and our local counterparts into one where there's a feeling that the risks are shared. So, the kinds of hazards they face are hazards that we face, and then the rewards are shared. So the kinds of rewards that, we have the same kinds of rewards that the locals experience. And as a result, that there's some measure of equity in the relationship, and a greater sense of collaboration, cooperation in the entire endeavor of promoting human rights. So I think these are constructive mechanisms. Now, the last thing I will say is that we have to recognize that human rights is a mission. It's a movement. It's not something that's done overnight. It's not something that has very apparent victories in the short term. It's something as a result that we have to treat as a long-term project. And so places like Burma, incredibly dire situations right now with very disheartening circumstances as we speak. But we have to recognize that that this is not an excuse for just simply stopping the effort of human rights and leaving and walking away to leave people where they are. if we're committed to human rights, we're committed to promoting human rights, it means we have to maintain engagement in some fashion. We have to figure out a way to work with our counterparts in those kinds of places and to see what they tell us about what they consider to be effective ways to sustain the movement of human rights so that over the long term, there can be substantive change and that we see ultimately a realization of the ideals that we all claim to share.